Welcome to the SNN Network Canada virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Gordon Dean of Aurora Solar. Sir, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Matt, and hello, everyone. Really appreciate that you've taken the time to join this presentation. So what I will do is I will go through the overall market for Aurora Solar Technologies, what it is that we do, what the particular needs we're addressing are, what some forward-looking remarks about what the company's going to be doing over the next several months and years, and then I'll wrap up and take questions. So, first of all, there are some forward-looking statements in this presentation, so I would like to draw your attention to this confidentiality and disclosure slide. You can see this also on our website under the corporate presentation that's there. So I do urge you to read this and be familiar with it. On the next slide, I'm going to say basically what the company is all about. So we are in the field of providing to makers of solar cells within the renewable energy field the means to be able to control the quality and throughput of their manufacturing, increasing the yield and enhancing their profitability. These are basically commodity products, and what we're doing is we're helping them to be able to get the most out of their capital in their manufacturing lines and address the market in the best way that they can. Our products are instrumentation and also these control systems that are used within the manufacturing plant. So these are not within the field in the solar panels. These are actually upstream from that during the manufacturing. We have a large installed base of products throughout East Asia. And one of the things I'm really excited about, and I'm going to tell you more about during this presentation, is that we're launching a new software product, which is subscription-based. And this goes beyond our existing products for doing instrumentation and measurement within the manufacturing lines to give an end-to-end view that can be directly applied to increase the quality and the selling price of the products that they make. In order to get to doing all this, we have a great team. I'm just going to talk about a few people on the team, but there's a number of others behind them as well. Myself, I'm a engineer by training, and I've worked in a number of organizations, both public and private. I started my career at Nortel Networks, was there for 17 years, moved into satellite communications, and just before Aurora, I was involved in a turnaround of a publicly traded company on NASDAQ in California. And that's where I got my exposure to the solar field. In that company, I was part of the executive team and officer of the company, and was responsible for bringing 2 new products to the market, one of which is their flagship product. Kevin Dodds, who I work with very closely on our board of directors, he's got a very strong background in growing companies, and we're basically from very small beginnings to more than $100 million in sales annually, and lots of experience in doing business in China, which is our main market for our products. Johnson Wong is a recognized leader in the industry technically. He is an expert in the field of how solar cells operate, the physics of them, and he is one of the primary people behind the capabilities of our products, particularly this Insight product that we're bringing to the market. And Wei Deng, he is native of Beijing, and he's responsible for our sales in the Asia-Pacific region. He's an expert and has worked in companies as large as Microsoft in business development, sales, and strategic development, and also as small as Aurora in being able to do business effectively and generate sales within Asia and within China in particular. So now I'll move on to the market. For those of you that are not familiar with the solar energy market, it is one of the fastest growing renewable energy fields, and at this point, the largest. So the annual growth for for decades in solar has been in the range of 20 to 25%. And the growth is only accelerating recently due to changes, for example, the policies put in place by the Biden administration in the United States and also elsewhere around the world, where there's been strong incentives over a long period of time to move to renewable energy and solar in particular. So this is an industry that for us, from a standpoint of the amount of power that's being generated by solar, is growing at 25% a year. And the amount of money and value within the industry is growing at about 20% a year. So this is a very, very significant high growth industry that Aurora is putting our products into. Within that industry, our market is the solar cell manufacturers. So I'll describe what a solar cell is in a minute, but you can consider it to be a constituent of a solar panel. Solar cell manufacturers have very interesting characteristics. They're effectively producing commodities, and a lot of them. There's over 30 billion of these made every year around the world. And the fact is that because of the growth I described earlier, they're spending a lot of capital continuously building out their capabilities and their capacity to manufacture. That's about $5.5 billion within 2021, and it's growing. And we address about 9% of that market with our products, along with a number of other companies. So again, it's a very attractive market for a company like ours to provide products into. And I said at the top of this slide that solar cell manufacturers have to scale profitably. That's a bit of an issue for them, which I'll get into in a minute. But first, let me tell you what a solar cell is, so that you have a good perspective on how this fits together with the things that you will see when you see solar farms that are on top of roofs or in fields. A solar cell, as you can see from this slide, it starts with a silicon wafer. So these are purified silicon. They're wafers that are roughly about 160 millimeters by 160 millimeters. And as you can see that they then are made into the solar cells, which is at the lower right-hand side of this slide. The solar cell is what actually generates electricity when sunlight strikes it. The panel, which is at the top right-hand side, is a means to be able to have the solar cells wired together and put into a package that's of a good size and protected from the elements to be able to install it outdoors. So the solar cells, that's the most sophisticated part of the manufacturing value chain, and that's where we address the needs that are within that part of the equation. So those needs specifically are to be more profitable. Most solar manufacturers that are making solar cells are suffering, I would say, from gross margins that are in the 15 to 20% range. This is because the products are commodities. There's intense price competition on an ongoing basis. And if you look at the pie chart, you can see that the raw material costs are more than half of what their value of the finished goods are. Manufacturing costs tend to scale along with the size of the plants and the number of plants. And then you have this slice of that pie called profit, which is what their gross margin is when they're finished. Now, another aspect of this is that that profit margin is being squeezed continuously. There is roughly a 10% reduction in selling price on a per watt basis of solar cells and solar panels every year. So they just need to run in order to stay still with respect to those margins. They address this in three ways. One of them is continuous improvement on the actual design of the solar cells so that they can continuously generate a little bit more power every year on a panel-by-panel or cell-by-cell basis. A few years ago, a 300-watt solar panel was the norm. Now about 400 watts is the norm. That's an example of that. Another way they do it is by economies of scale in their supply chain. So those raw material costs and the manufacturing costs, they can affect those to some degree. However, upstream raw material providers tend to have more pricing power than these companies do at this point in the value chain. So there's a limited amount of work they can do on that front. And then finally, it's effectiveness in the manufacturing, and that's where we play. So many of these companies have scaled to the levels they're at pretty recently, and there's not the degree of maturity and capability in the industry, or has not been, in terms of running very effective, high-yield manufacturing operations. And we saw this as a gap, and we said, okay, we're going to be the first movers in addressing that. So that's where we come in, and how we're doing that is on this slide. So one of the things that you need to do effective manufacturing is, first of all, you need to have data about how your plant is actually operating. So that's the measurement aspect. We have an existing line of products we call the DM series measurement systems, and these are on the lower right-hand side of this presentation. These products measure one of the critical steps in the process of transforming a raw silicon wafer into a finished solar cell. And we have these installed in 6 of the top 10 manufacturers in the world within the solar cell manufacturing scope. The other things that you need to do are to visualize. So measurements just produce numbers, but then you need to put them into the context of the pieces of equipment and how the pieces of equipment are behaving. So we do that with our measurement systems. And then, but there's also a bridge there to what you see at the top right-hand side, which is our new software product. So it picks up where the visualization happens and then moves into the area of control. And in this case, it's providing actionable intelligence, the means to be able to do things that actually improve your throughput, which is the number of units per hour over a period of a week, a month, a year, and the yield, which is producing the highest quality, highest value products primarily, and not having big variations in that quality in terms of the finished goods. And in this industry, that's measured by how much electricity each solar cell produces when it's tested at the end of the line. So it costs you the same amount of money to produce a solar cell that can generate 5 watts under test conditions as one that can generate 5.5 watts under test conditions, but you get an increased 10% value from the one that produces the 5.5 watts. So it's really important to try and produce as many of those as you can, and the least amount of 5 or less watt cells. So we go about this in the Insight product by providing these aspects. First of all, the product uses this information that's generated during this testing of all the finished goods and combines that with information about how the materials are flowing during their manufacturing through these plants. And some of them are very large plants, so they have tens or even over 100 different machines that are performing the process steps. And looking at those both collectively and individually to monitor their performance, to rapidly detect events. So at some point every single day, multiple times a day, something will go wrong. And it's really hard in these plants for them currently to find out exactly what went wrong where and then quickly correct it. And then finally, based on all of this in the lower 2 boxes in this chart, combining all that with the ability to be able to see what's going on through a web-based interface and ability to do collaborative reporting and collaborative action, that's very important. And then also the actual analysis of what's going on with any of these issues that arise, or also for the purposes of fine-tuning things to make them perform better and better. Currently, their methods for doing this are rather ad hoc and manual. And in other industries, what we're bringing to the table in order to automate that, make it less ad hoc and make it more predictable and more data-driven, These have been done in other industries like pharmaceuticals, chemicals, semiconductors, and so forth when they were maturing and growing. And so this is a well-established approach to yield management and to profitability improvement. And what we're doing is we're just bringing it to this industry with unique capabilities that we developed in our own intellectual property on how to go about doing that. So the results, when you're doing this right, you get better revenue because you have stopped having issues of machines being down for long periods of time while you're trying to figure out and troubleshoot a problem. You also don't need to impact the throughput by doing tests and running special runs of raw material in order to try to figure out where a problem may occur or where a machine that may be operating in a subpar manner may be. The operating costs reduced because what we're doing is we're automating much of what you would do that I just described and making it so that instead of having to do these things, you can actually just look at a screen and select certain drop downs and push buttons on the screen to get reports. And ultimately, what this means is that as I coming back to what I said earlier, the difference between the 5.5 watts per finished cell and the 5 watts per finished cell in terms of your margin increases as well, because the natural effect of that is that you can get most or all of the machinery in the plant operating at peak performance for a greater percentage of the time. Now, competitively, we play into the field that is characterized as measurement systems, but because we're going beyond that, our competition addresses various aspects of what we address with our combination of products, but not the whole thing. So we're really looking at not just generating data, but turning it into information that tells customers, okay, so over the last 24 hours, these sets of machines have been performing below or above their peers, and help the customers to figure out why and what they should do to bring things back in line. And over the longer term, we can do that sort of thing as well. None of these other companies have those sorts of capabilities within their product portfolios. So that's the differentiator that we have as well in the market. Now I'm going to move on a little bit into where we stand today. So within the DM products are well established in the market. With Insight, we're in the process of getting this into the market now. So at the moment, we're moving from this first chevron on this slide, and we're close to coming to a conclusion on that. We have been in an evaluation phase with a lead customer now for some time. With that, what we have been able to do is to solidify the use cases for the product, more fully understand exactly how it's applied across a broad variety of applications, and also to make sure that the user interface and the reporting capabilities are aligned with what the customer needs really are. So that is coming close to a conclusion. We also recently signed an agreement to bring that's a relatively high technology but smaller player. We also recently signed an agreement to take it into a larger player within the core market, which is in China, mainland China, and do an evaluation there. And we're just in the process of getting that ready to go. And we expect that to occur within the first quarter of next year. With that, then we will have the basis to start to move into volume sales later in 2022. So that will take us into the center chevron in there. As time moves on, our intention with Insight is that it will be the standard and the means for our customers to be able to basically on a day-to-day, month-to-month, week-to-week basis, operate and run their plants, as I was saying earlier, at peak performance. And it will also be centerpiece for us to have with respect to all the data sources, which is the existing ones where they do the testing at the end of the lines, our DM measurement systems, and other instrumentation and measurement systems that will form the basis for part of the growth of the company as well as we look ahead and build those out both organically and through acquisitions as well. We have partnerships now. In this presentation, I talked about WaveLabs, which is one of the two large companies that produce these testers at the end of the line. We are also just moving into a partnership with another company called Bybart, which we recently announced, and their responsibility for us is to provide us with the solutions for tracking material through the manufacturing plants in cases where our customers do not have their own native wafer tracking that they've put in place already in their plants. So with these partnerships, what we're able to do is not just provide the software, but also to provide with the customers with a complete solution. And that enables us to move more quickly in the market and address a broader range of customers, from the very, very advanced to the majority of them that are very good at what they're doing, but they're not necessarily as technologically advanced as some of the leaders. So that's really a quick presentation of the company, what our position is in the market, and how we're moving forward in the market. One thing I'd like to do now is I'd like to quickly indicate what it is that we're looking at with respect to the valuation. So this software product, Insight, is moving us from a hardware-based to more of a SaaS-based model with recurring revenue for our products. So now as we do this, we compare ourselves to these companies that are on these slides. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to address one question now, and then we'll be wrapping up. So the question I'm going to address is, I'm going to actually address two of them. What is your vision for the company in the next 12 months? Where would you like to be? And when did you start this project? How long have you been developing Insight? And what is your current invested R&D cost? So the vision for the company is that over the next 12 months, we're going to move Insight into the volume sales within the main parts of our market. So that's primarily China, and there'll also be some in other East Asian countries that we do business in as well. So it's really taking it from this initial step where we're just bringing it into the market for its first entry point to being able to qualify that, get our experience with the first lead customers, and then move it into the more volume sales. So that's number one. Number two, when did we start the project? We actually started the work on Insight a few years ago, when we were starting to see, just from our work with the DM instruments, that there was this need. We knew it existed, but we really started to get a better understanding of it around that time. And it's been the last 2.5 years where we really have been focusing on the development of that with our lead customer, the smaller company that's outside China that I mentioned. So that's allowed us to be able to pinpoint precisely the use cases and the value for the product, and allow us to start developing how we're going to price it and support it in the market as well. The current invested R&D cost, I don't have the specific number, but it would be a few $1 million on this collectively, when you look at not just the R&D, but also the work with the customers in terms of doing business development for the product as well. So that's pretty much it. I haven't been able to address all the questions that people have, but I do encourage you to contact Jake Boma at CorpComm, that's CorpComm, at AuroraSolarTech.com if you have any further questions. and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much.
That concludes today's presentation. Thank you for tuning in.